I still remember the day that I first walked onto the flight line, my high-vis vest on, and I was greeted by the entire fleet of flight test airplanes. And I especially remember the day that I sat in the radio car, holding short of the runway, as I watched the flight test airplane take off. The engines were roaring. The radios were full of call signs. My heart was pounding, and my hands were a little shaky as I was monitoring the comms on the radio. I was overcome with emotions, and in these emotions, I came to the realization that my curiosity had led me to that moment. So today I want to talk you through how curiosity and how you can use it to fuel you. In these moments, I remember as a little girl when I would look up at the sky. Now, space is my first love. So I would look up at the sky and I would wonder if the moon was following me. Because why is it that wherever my mom drove, the moon was always there? And then I would stare up at the stars and I'd wonder why they were there, how they were glowing. But in the sky, there was also some other bright lights. But these lights were moving and they'd get bigger. And I asked myself, what are those? Those bright lights that were moving were airplanes, which then took me to ask myself, how do the airplanes fly? That curiosity, as I've mentioned, has brought me to these moments, including standing on the launch pad that once launched Apollo and launched these space shuttles. Now, I want you to know that engineering is not just about equations, it's not just about schematics. It's about connecting. It's about connecting the world to opportunity and to versions of yourself that you never knew were possible. So, why does that fly? That was a question I kept asking myself. And you can see little Claudia, who has always been filled of so much curiosity. Other questions I asked myself was, where are those airplanes going? Who are in those airplanes? And I had a moment of answers when I would drop off my dad, who's originally from El Salvador, and we drop him off to the airport as he took some trips back to his home country. But even then, I continued to ask questions. What happened once he disappeared into the airport? Where was he going? What does El Salvador look like? Curiosity has been what has fueled me in the moments of self-doubt. Curiosity is what has fueled me when I have applied to internships that I didn't feel like I was qualified for. Curiosity has taken me through the long hours upon hours in the library trying to study for that dynamics exam. Or when the homework got hard when I was studying linear algebra. So I want to remind you, when you are studying and you're feeling like it's difficult and you can't do it, I want you to connect to what got you back into engineering to begin with. What questions have you asked yourself since you were a younger kid? The big questions that bring bigger possibilities. Curiosity has been my spark, but engineering has become the vehicle for me. In flight test, we often travel to remote locations. This past summer, I visited about a couple of states, maybe like 4 different states. I've been to Oklahoma City, and then I've been to Roswell, New Mexico, and then it also brought me back here to Palmdale, California. It's been weeks upon weeks where I have been met with the different locations where I have no family, no friends, no familiar faces. But it is in this time that I'm able to connect with myself and explore new parts of myself that I didn't know were possible. Again, engineering is that vehicle that will help you explore beyond the machines that we build. I have used STEM as a passport. It really has opened doors and opportunities for me that younger Claudia could have never thought possible. When I was younger, I actually grew up in South Central Los Angeles, so I heard someone say that they grew up in downtown LA. I'm also local, and I also went to schools of low income where you had to use the coupons in order to receive your lunch. So I didn't grow up with engineers, I didn't grow up with pilots, and I didn't grow up knowing someone who worked in the aerospace industry. But as I mentioned, I grew up looking up, literally. As I mentioned, work has taken me to many different places. I think there's one that I forgot to mention that was one of my favorites. I actually got to travel to Fairbanks, Alaska earlier this year, and there you see a picture of me in a high-vis vest looking at the northern lights. The picture on the furthest left is me walking through the White Sands National Park, located in New Mexico, and then the furthest right is me looking out close to Moses Lake in Washington. Now I want you to know that engineering is not always glamorous. It does come with obstacles. I myself was a commuter when I was in college. I first attended Pasadena City College, and then I transferred over to Cal Poly Pomona. And in that time, I was faced with long commutes. It took maybe 40 minutes to get from one location to another, and then an hour and plus with traffic. And even now, as I've graduated high school and I'm in the industry, I'm still met with a lot of different obstacles. The schedule doesn't go as planned, the test doesn't go as planned, and the data that we collected is maybe not the data that we were anticipating. So what do you do in these moments? The moments where, again, you're stuck with self-doubt. You're asking yourself, am I capable of doing this? And do I belong here? I bring you back to the curiosity that you use as your fuel. Ask yourself, how does that work? And then you can use your education, your dynamics, your fluid mechanics to understand the technical information. Engineering is about exploration, and engineering is about perspective. I'm glad to be able to have the perspective where I look at the world around me and understand the electronics that go behind a presentation such as this, the airplanes that take off that connect families around the world, the spacecraft that are launched into the universe to help us understand what is going on in our universe, such as the James Webb Telescope, the satellites that help us connect with one another in terms of communication. Engineering is not always glamorous. I can tell you about the different trips that I've taken and all that I've been able to accomplish with engineering, but I want you to understand that even after you're done with your classes, even after the long hours of studying, you will be met with your own new obstacles once you enter the industry. If there's one thing that I want you to take away from my talk today, is that engineering is sparked by curiosity. Allow those questions to help guide you in your journey. Ask the questions and keep asking questions, because it will lead you to places that you never thought possible. With that, if you're ready for takeoff, parking brace Parking brake release in 3, 2, 1.